Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another live stream on H5 Podcast. And today I'm joined by Jeff Tadlock from Stairway to Reason. I have his YouTube channel, Stairway to Reason, tagged in the description below, and the link to his Facebook page, Stairway to Reason, is also provided in the description below. It will also be in the pinned comment at the end of the podcast. And that being said, Jeff, thank you very much for joining me today.
Absolutely.
Jeff is someone I did some posts with, a couple of videos with many years ago, even before I started this very channel, History Valley. I remember we did a video once. I think it was around 2019 about Constantine and Christianity, and that was pretty fun. But today we're talking about
I remember you sent me some scripts.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Very, very intense and intriguing.
Yeah, that was such a long time ago.
Yes, it was.
6+ years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, today we're talking about your journey out of Christianity, how you came out of it, how you became an atheist.
Okay.
So I kind of want to start from the top and we work our way down to the bottom. Let's start with, how did you initially become a Christian? How did that happen?
I was born into it. My father was an oddball. Didn't live like a Christian, but extremely devout as far as preaching Christianity and making sure your soul was saved. On one hand, very devout and believing, and on the other hand, kind of a rebellious, reckless kind of man. Didn't live according to what the Bible would spell out for a moral lifestyle, but a firm believer, and so I was heavily indoctrinated from birth, I guess, with religious symbols, crosses, Bibles. My dad, when I was just a toddler and up, would tell stories about Jesus and angels and Moses, and we didn't have a lot of money, but there was one year that he even put me into a Christian school in the grade school days. So just deep indoctrination from birth.
And what led you to start doubting Christianity? What were the circumstances that started to cause you to question it?
Yeah, so that happened late in life. I'm 51 years old now, and I really don't think that started till my late 30s, when I even posed a little bit of doubt, like just questioning, like it wasn't doubt at first. It was like, well, maybe the way I think about Christianity isn't quite right. I still believed, but I started to change the way I viewed the religion and the ideology. That started to shift first before I went into a complete leaving of the faith. So what was the question again? We went from like birth to later in life. I maintained a devout Christian ideology up until my late 30s or early 40s.
So what was the spark? What was like the first thing that started the domino effect of you eventually leaving the religion?
Yeah. So really what it was is, I grew up with a single parent. My father, he was pretty reckless and married 4 times. I had abusive stepmoms in and out of my life. Poverty, times of poverty with my father. And so I had a really rough childhood and upbringing. And life didn't get that much easier for me, as I never completed high school or anything like that. dove really heavy into music, and of course that's a whole nother story of my life, bittersweet story. But so I just kind of, as a young adult, I went into life without any tools for success that maybe a good home or a good upbringing might provide for a person. I didn't have any of that kind of stuff. So my life was really challenging and hard at times, but I was never a bad person. I was never a drug user, an alcoholic, never a violent person, not a criminal at all. In fact, the state of Washington told me I could conceal a pistol. That's how clean my record is. I can put a sidearm under my coat and go into Walmart. That's how clean my record is. I've never been a bad person or anything. Just struggling with finances in my own relationships, to the point where, to answer your question, I had to lead it. I had to fill that in for you. Life got so hard for me at times, that there were a lot of times where I really wanted to feel God in my life, to be closer to God, to get help from God, get on my knees and pray with fervor, thinking that God would intervene in some way, some magical, wonderful, blessed way, because I loved Him, and I followed His ways. And after a decade of on your knees pleading with God, and walking the straight and narrow, and seeing no intervention from an almighty, or a God that loves you, or a father who loves you and wishes you well, I began to realize that any progress in my life, any positivity in my life, is my own doing, my own two hands. There seems to be no help from above. And after about 10 years of really wanting to get close to God, and knowing God, and needing God, really, really needing Him, my mother abandoned me. I don't have a mother, never had. And my father was kind of a reckless father, and he ended up homeless. So I really needed a parent, and I reached out to God to fill that role. And all my reaching, and all my pleading, and all my wanting just felt like it wasn't going anywhere. Like my prayers were just like I was just talking to a wall, I guess you would say. At some point, it started to feel like that. And so that's the reason why I actually chose to study the Bible harder and get into God more, to get that real relationship that I've always needed and I've always wanted. It must be me. Something's wrong with me. I'm not devoted enough. So it was that time that I really decided I'm just going to study the Bible. I don't know what else to do. I can pray and pray and pray and pray, try to get this relationship with Jesus, and to no avail. So my next move was in my early 30s was to I think mid 30s was to okay, finally get that relationship with Jesus that I always wanted and felt that I never had. The only thing I could think of was to study the Bible, read the Bible every day, but not just read it, but study it, learn about it. Where did it come from? Who wrote it? Not just read it, but study it. And what happened was, instead of what I thought would happen, that I would get closer to Jesus and start to feel Him in my life, it started to go in the opposite direction, whereas studying the Bible actually uh, opened things to me that I never knew about the Bible, and things that made me question more. And so it was this intense desire to get closer to Jesus, studying the Bible, that it flipped and went the opposite way. And that was when my doubt began to set in, when I started to study the Bible from, let's say, a historical or archaeological point of view, things started to change in me. And it wasn't a light switch. It didn't happen overnight. It was, I still recall that final year when I finally had the strength in my mind to say, I don't believe this anymore. There was like a prelude to that where I would be like, where I'd be like, well, I don't know if I believe in the Bible anymore, or if I believe in Christianity, but I'm not going to deny Jesus no matter what. I remember that state of mind for a while, like for maybe a 6-month period. And then at some point, I was just like, well, I got no choice but just to deny all of this stuff. Like, none of this stuff is real. It just all just kind of set in over maybe a course of 2 to 3 years to where I got past when you're losing your religion the way I did, it's kind of like Jesus. You still cling to him like a comfort blanket, and then one day you just kind of finally let that blanket go. Late 30s, probably.
And when you decided to fully let it go, what was it like for you? Did you have complications with any other family members or friends, or none of that? What was going on exactly?
Well, no, it's not something I really shared until I became fascinated with my own story. And I started a Facebook page, as you know, called Stairway to Reason. Basically, just documenting my experience and why I no longer believe. Prior to starting that Facebook page, it was just my own personal thing, my own feeling. I didn't share it with the vast array of Christian family members or anything. I mean, they all began to find out, even friends that were devout Christians found out. It wasn't until I started becoming, have an open mouth on the subject that family and friends started to, some irate, some disowning me, and some just expressing disappointment. So when you keep it to yourself, it's not an issue. It's like anything. It's like if you bring politics to your workplace, you're gonna find some people that don't like you anymore. It's the same with religion, with your family. Um, it's not something you necessarily need to tell them. I kind of didn't, but when I started my page, obviously it sort of spread and got out. It was a fairly popular page, I think, to begin with. I think you might testify to that. Not a large following, but people liked my story, and it was. I think I told my story back before this was so common. It seems pretty common now that there's people like me about my age who were Christians that have realized it's not true. So yeah, I think that answers your question.
And when you started looking at the Bible more critically, especially after you left Christianity all the way, to try to figure out where it came from, and you looked into the historical Jesus a little bit, what came out of that research?
Well, I mean, all of my research, I documented. Um, every single bit of everything I researched, I documented via video. And that's what became of it. And, I kind of stopped doing videos for two reasons. One is as you might know, it's to maintain a page and a populace who follows you. It takes an incredible amount of your time and effort. And there was nothing more for me to study or do. I had documented everything in my journey, and everything I learned, I did. So it was either if I wanted to continue doing videos, I would have to go further, maybe into the Old Testament, which I never did, or into another religion like Islam. And at some point, there's nothing left to say or do. Onefold. So that's one result of everything that happened was my page, and why I'm here with you now. Where was I going? I lost my train of thought there. But and the other thing is it takes a lot of time and effort to share everything you've gone through and everything that I learned and studied, which addresses your question. I put into video. I mean, everything. There's not anything that I left out that I learned, thought about, reasoned with. It's all on my page. Every video covers there's nothing left in my mind. I would have to study more to do what you're doing. I know you got into the Old Testament a lot, and to me, I thought about doing that. I looked at the book, and the Old Testament's huge, and I'm like, this is a lot of work for almost no pay, right? For me, there wasn't much of an income with the process, so I did. There's nothing more for me to really do. So naturally, I said what I needed to say about religion, about my transformation, all the reasons why. Put it online, and that was kind of it. It just comes to an end at some point, and at some point, you got to start investing in your time into things that make you money, I suppose, was just the next thing. Like, where do I go from here? So, yeah. Hope that answered your question.
Oh yeah, it did. And when you started to look at Jesus himself more critically,
Mm-hmm.
again in your research, because I know you gave some thoughts about the historical Jesus on your page back then.
I did.
What do you think of him?
Well, at that time, when I was studying the historical Jesus, there was two prominent professors. I think arguably the best historical professors on the historicity of Jesus. That was, I don't know who they are today, but I'd say back then it was Richard Carrier and it was Bart Ehrman. And there were two paths, and one was Ehrman's thoughts on the historical Jesus. The other was Richard Carrier's thoughts on the historical Jesus.
Before you continue,
Okay.
I just want to correct you slightly. Carrier was never tenured. He was never a professor. He was just a doctor. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But he seemed like he had some credentials, maybe. Historical,
a PhD from Columbia University.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay. So Ehrman was a professor, still is, I assume. So I listened to both of them a lot. And I think I tended to side with Ehrman. I thought Bart Ehrman was a little more reasonable to me. I thought Richard Carrier was a little bit more, kind of a little far-fetched to me, it seemed to me. But, I could almost go either way, but I tend to think that that there was a real historical Jesus, obviously not at all in the way that Christians would describe him. I would describe him as a Jew who followed the Torah, and he taught in the synagogues, so clearly he followed the Torah. He would have been stoned to death had he spoke of himself being God, or anything like this. So the historical Jesus in my mind was a Jewish guy who at that time the kingdom of heaven was in Israel, where all the weapons would be beat into plowshares, and there would be peace on earth. And at that time, there would be a king on the throne. And in Jesus, a lot of people stepped up to the plate, claiming claiming that title to be the. I got a loud car right next to the studio here. So a lot of people claimed that title at that time in history. It was a popular time because Roman Rome was so heavy on the Jews. Jews wanted freedom from Roman rule. So at that time, it was a kind of a really popular thing to step up and claim to be the Messiah, the who would be the king who restored Israel and brought peace to the world. And I think that's what Jesus was thinking he wanted to be. And it had no correlation with Christianity as we see it today. It was a completely different thing. But that Jesus, I believe, did exist. And probably to the extent that he even had a lot of favor with misfits and poor people and sick people and prostitutes and all those stories. There's probably some truth to some of that stuff. He probably really built a coalition off of people who were poor and didn't like how the divide between the rich and the poor. I think Jesus probably really did side with poor people and probably hung out with them and probably built quite a following by doing so. That's about as much as I would say on the historical Jesus, if he did exist. I could also I could be swayed in Richard Carrier's position as well, that he's not even he was completely made up character doesn't even exist. I'm not far from adopting that idea as well.
Yeah, I'm just personally, I'm just not. I don't really think mythicism has established any good reasons to think that he did exist. That's why I think Bart Ehrman is
Yeah,
wrong.
I kind of assumed you were in that camp, and I think you've been on that side of the fence for quite some time, if I recall, going all the way back maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Because I know who you are. We've been in touch off and on since I started.
Yeah, yeah. I'm pretty. I would say I'm pretty hardcore historicist. I've never found mythicism convincing. I
Yeah,
kind of get why some people think it. You just have to have a lot of what if steps to kind of get there. And
yeah. Kind of odd that there's no writings from him, that he didn't write anything, or there's no lineage, no kids or anything, no family
I mean, we
lineage.
don't. We
That's an
got
odd.
the same problem with a lot of messianic
He
claimants.
had
It's
brothers
too,
and stuff. There should be a
yeah,
line of Jesus. There
yeah.
is nothing. Same with the apostles as well. They
It's
don't
it's
have
like
kids or lineage.
it's like saying the Jewish rebel Menahem ben Judah, mentioned by Josephus, didn't exist because we don't have any, lineage or children from him or whatever.
Yeah,
But but the thing about Menahem is we don't have a New Testament about Menahem. He doesn't do miracles, but because Jesus does those things, somehow that makes Jesus special. We have to doubt him more. But the way I look at it is actually the fact that they think he did miracles actually increases my thinking he existed, because you can't have a person that did not exist do those things. You can't attribute those things to those things.
yeah,
Even today, when somebody gets assassinated, they'll create a lot of conspiracy theories, or they'll mythologize person in an instant, especially if it's a major event. And so I think that Jesus, that kind of thing happened with Jesus.
well, I'll tell you, I don't think miracles happen at all, and I'm sure you
No,
agree with
I
me.
don't think so. But what I'm saying is
Miracle,
the fact that they claim that he did those things.
yeah, miracles are always told much later,
I know.
because every story needs a miracle or it's not interesting. Even in a Hollywood movie, I mean, we need these spectacular things to happen, or it just loses its interest. And so miracles, popped up much later, and I'm sure you know that. Like when you read the any of the
I do.
letters of Paul, the epistles, he doesn't mention any miracles, but all of a
Yeah,
sudden,
the
when
only
you
thing he
read
talks
the book
about was
of
the
Acts,
resurrection. Yeah.
when you read the book of Acts, which was written
Yeah.
50 years later, all of a sudden it's just chopped full of these fantastic miracles. So
Yeah.
miracles come much later. So if there was a historical Jesus, he didn't do any miracles because we would have contemporary evidence of such things. I mean, who wouldn't
Right.
build a
Right.
statue of a guy who could do miracles or write about it
But what I was saying
in the
is just
halls
it's the
of
fact that they
the
would
Greek
go that far
library?
to attribute those things that he didn't do, is just my point. And
Yeah.
I got this comment in the chat from Kinetic, like they could afford to heap those things onto his established reputation. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of it's kind of what I think happened. Like I think that Jesus, they wanted to make Jesus better than Greco-Roman gods and Greco-Roman heroes that did those kind of miracles, like Odysseus calming the storm in Homer's Odyssey.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
things like
you couldn't
right,
sell a story back in those days without a
right.
miracle. That was just
Uh,
that was the way
this
it went.
I don't know if you ever heard of uh Dennis McDonald? I've had him on the I've had him on the channel several times, and other people have had him on too.
Mm,
And he kind of goes over this kind of stuff in books like Mythologizing Jesus, from Jewish teacher to epic hero, where it's like just like a motherload of parallels between the Gospels, Acts, and Homer. A lot
mm.
of parallels.
Yeah,
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 a lot of
I
American
heard a
relation
little
going
bit
on.
about that as
You know,
well. I didn't get much into the mythological Jesus, to be honest with you.
you know,
Maybe if I were to continue doing videos and that kind of thing, maybe that's where my studies would lean towards.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
uh,
But yeah, it's just it's also to me it's also like saying that Julius Caesar didn't exist. Because like, okay, so when he dies, he gets mythologized, he's deified, turned into a god.
mm,
I mean, sometimes they'll attribute miracles that they didn't do. Like, Roman historians in the 2nd century, they thought Vespasian healed a blind man.
yeah,
They attributed miracles to him, even though he didn't do miracles. Obviously, they
yeah.
said that he did, and that's what I think happened with Jesus.
Well,
No,
when you're trying to get people to believe in something, it almost requires you to spin a miracle so that they think that this guy was special, or maybe God or whatever. I mean, if you're going to claim somebody's God, you better also throw in a few miracles, you know. So yeah, it's disturbing how we as human beings really are. Like, if we really want to hype up something, you even see the same thing they did to Jesus, the same thing you see in commercials. They hype up these products, and then you get all excited about it, and then you buy it on Amazon. It shows up at your doorstep 3 days later, and it's not anything like what they hyped it up to be. It's like just human nature to hype things up, or this miracle potion, or
yeah,
this miracle lotion, or this miracle man, believe in it, follow it. I don't know why we got to have miracles to get excited about somebody or something.
well, yeah, yeah.
But that's how you
Um,
sell a story. And
in a way, yeah, Paul's a great example because you go from letters, which has like almost no miracles in it at all,
yeah, no
except
magic.
for
Yeah.
you got Paul being taken to the third heaven in 2 Corinthians. That's it. And
Yeah, that wasn't really a miracle. That was the modern Greco-Roman ideology of like having a spirit body and coming out of it in your dreams. The Greeks wrote about that, had the kind of the same language a little bit at the same time. So
yeah,
that was kind of like just common. Everybody knew. If you were back in those days, what Paul said would have made sense to you versus us trying to make sense of it now. It was just the common lore of spirituality in those days that he was using. So that, to me, that he wasn't appealing to magic at all.
and the earliest person to mention Paul was Clement in the 90s AD, where he wrote one Clement, and he never talks about Paul's vision ever. Doesn't know anything about it.
Mm.
Never says it. Doesn't know anything about Paul's miracles either. Um,
Oh
he
yeah,
didn't
you read
even,
the book of Acts, it's absolutely
you know.
ludicrous how many miracles are pinned to this guy.
Yeah, I've had scholars on my channel that are dating Paul's letters way later in time, and are
Mm.
saying that the standard dating is wrong, and that does make sense to me because I felt that way for many years. The standard dating of Paul's letters is wrong, and Clement doesn't know anything about these grandiose travels that Paul did in his letters. He
Like
knows
in the
some
book
of it,
of
but
Acts.
not to the same detail.
Yeah.
Knows nothing about Paul's vision. Never talks about it. Like,
Mm.
okay, that's a lot of stuff to ignore. Never talks about the four gospels ever. It's like he didn't. It's like they didn't even exist yet. So it's like
Yeah.
it's like
Some of the miracles are outrageous too in the book of
yeah,
Acts concerning Paul. Like the one where he gets stoned to death and he's lying there dead and gets dragged out of the city to be handed off to the wild animals to finish him off, and then he gets up and walks away. Or he gets bitten by a
yeah.
snake, poisonous snake, and he's dying, and then he survives that one. What are some of the other ones? Oh, you could just touch his cloak and be healed. Um, oh, there's some other outrageous ones. I kind of forget what they are now, but it's pretty outrageous stories you think he might mention in one of his letters.
Right. Yeah, he
Yeah.
could be bothered to do that. Yeah, I don't think the
Makes me
person.
pretty suspicious.
I don't think the person that's, and the way I put it is, I don't think the person claiming to be Paul that's writing any of these letters, along with these collaborators, Timothy, Silas, Sophanes.
Oh, you don't think it was Paul himself that wrote the
No,
say the 13? I
I,
know that there's 7 of them that are disputed by historians, but uh,
no, I don't think any of them are by
handful of
Paul.
them that are not disputed, at least back when I
Yeah,
was studying it.
yeah. I don't think any of them are by Paul. I think the Clement only knew a letter, so he only attests to one letter.
Mm.
Doesn't tell us which one of the letters it is. It has some parallels to First Corinthians, but it doesn't tell us who it was written to exactly. It seems like to me it was like a Catholic letter written to the entire organization. But
Yeah,
it's it's
Rome was stepping in and taking control at that point. You're thinking,
yeah, and Clement. There's a scholar, Oscar Coleman. He pointed out around 1930. I think that's when he wrote. And he said that if you read 1 Clement, it says that envious people had Paul killed. So Clement thinks that people that were envious or jealous had Paul killed. He doesn't
hmm,
blame it on the Romans. So the idea that the Romans killed Paul, that comes from the late 2nd century with the Acts of Paul. So it's around like 170, 180, somewhere around there,
yeah.
I think.
Well, that makes
And the
sense
Acts,
'cause there was no Christian consensus until the 3rd century. I mean, there was competing Christian ideologies for quite a while there, so they may have been hating one another.
yeah, yeah, I think Clement's the one that's actually telling us how Paul died. I think he's the
Mm,
only reliable source on how he actually died. He's writing in the late 1st century,
mm,
and I don't think they would want to make up the idea that this envious people had him killed. And then the Acts of Paul, which is written like almost 100 years later, 80, 100 years later, somewhere around there.
mm.
It says that the Romans had Paul beheaded, but then that somehow he was yet alive. Now, I've had some people claim,
Another miracle of Paul.
we have some people claiming that I had some people like criticize me for thinking that Paul rose from the dead, according to the Acts of Paul. But I'm like, it kind of looks like that to me. So either
Well,
he wasn't beheaded, he was believed to be beheaded, it just didn't happen, or he was, and he somehow resurrected.
well, he
One of those,
survived stoning and a lethal
yeah,
snake bite, so I guess he is
that's a good
the
point. Yeah,
he had 9
exactly.
lives. I guess that guy.
Um, Yeah, I've had some people also question, like, okay, how do we know it? How do we know Juan Clement wrote Clement and that nonsense? But I'm like, I think with Juan Clement, I don't think somebody in their right mind would have forced that under Clement's name and write a letter that is ignorant of the entire New Testament. I'm just not buying it. I can't swallow that. It's
Yeah.
ignore. Let's pretend the four Gospels don't exist. Pretend the co-authors. Let's not mention Paul's co-authors. We gotta not mention them somehow. And he only has one letter. He only bothers to mention one letter about the original Paul, and then claim envious people killed Paul, not Romans. They usually would prefer to make up the idea Romans killed him. That's not what this letter does.
So, do you think all of the epistles are forgeries written by some political movement? Because religion was political at that time.
Yeah, I think it was created in the 90s AD. I don't think the letters can be.
So the same time as the Gospels, then you're saying. I wonder why.
I thought the Gospels even later, early second century.
Oh wow! Okay, into
early second century.
Oh wow! Okay. Okay.
And I'm pretty confident that everybody in the New Testament is using or plagiarizing stories of Josephus one way or the other.
Mm.
I've been pretty convinced of that for a very long time, like at least 6 years ago.
Well, you know how politicians can be. They're all fighting for some agenda, and if they can rewrite history, they sure will.
Yeah, I think
they sure will.
I think they were kind of using Paul like a sock puppet in a way. And I think what happened was they turned the original Paul, who I think was probably a pretty violent man, and they turned him into this peace-loving guy who had a vision, and they Catholicized him, they universalized him, like, oh, we're all in Christ, regardless of your beliefs. Like you read Galatians, it doesn't matter free, slave, Greek, or Jew. We're all in it together. It doesn't matter your differences. But one of the things I noticed about Paul's letters is if you look at 8 out of 13 of them, and and I'm not the only one that's noted it, but I don't think people, but they didn't really explain it like I am, and that is, these are co-authored letters. Most of them are. They're written by more than one person. They just read the beginning of them. 1 and 2 Thessalonians, Paul, Silas, Timothy. That's 3 authors.
Yeah, it's pretty. I think it's fairly common for a writer to have somebody write for them.
Well, that's not the same.
Paul could probably write, but there's a chance that he didn't know how to write. So, in a lot of cases, a lot of the apostles would have a scribe working for them.
There's a difference, though. Let's take the anti-Marcionite prologue of John, which claims that Papias wrote the Gospel of John while he was being dictated to by John. That's what it says.
Oh, okay.
That's not the same thing that's going on in Paul's letters. He's putting himself in equal footing with those other names. It's like if you look at 1 Thessalonians and 2 Thessalonians, Paul, Silas, and Timothy to the Church of Thessaloniki. So they're writing it together as equals. They are not scribes. They're not merely scribes. These are co-authors. And this explains something to me.
2 people in cahoots here.
3 people, actually.
3 people.
So the eschatology in 1 Thessalonians contradicts 2 Thessalonians massively. Scholars have been there, done that with comparing the 2. But I wondered, well, maybe co-authorship can explain the differences. It's a co-authored anthology where you have different viewpoints, different opinions being given by those 3 men. I'll give you a couple of examples of what I think are good examples of this. In Galatians, Paul says, I received from Jesus, only from Jesus, revelation from Jesus, not from no man. That's what he says. Galatians, Ephesians, 1 to Timothy, Titus, they're the only 5 letters attributed to Paul that are single authored. If you go to 1 Corinthians, it says the opposite. I received Jesus from scriptures. I'm like, wait, Paul. Hold on a minute. Dutch radicals like Robert and Price, he noted the contradiction. I'm like, you can't have it both ways. You either got the revelation from Jesus or you got it from text. Which is it, Paul? I'm like, well, I think it was Sophanes, the co-author of 1 Corinthians. I learned it from scripture. And Paul was the one that learned it from Jesus. Because in Galatians written by the man himself, whereas in 1 Corinthians, Sophanes was involved. I'll give another one. Romans was co-authored by Tertius. Now, here Romans is different because Tertius appears in Romans 16, the final chapter. I don't know why that happens. He inserts himself later. To me, I think he did that to kind of disassociate himself somewhat from viewpoints of Paul he didn't like that were between chapter 1 and chapter 16. So I think because I think Tertius shows up in 16:20, if I remember correctly. So he's like right close to the end of the letter. Like, so Tertius. So in Romans 1, they talk about, Jesus is the son of David. So Jesus descends from David. But then in 1 Timothy, Paul states, I don't like these endless genealogies. So I'm like, wait a minute, you were just giving me a genealogy of Romans. In fact, somewhere else in Romans, I think it's chapter 3, I don't remember, but somewhere in Romans, Paul talks about Jesus ascending from the patros, the fathers, the patriarchs. So he's stressing the genealogy, which contradicts 1 Timothy.
Yeah.
But I think it's not really Paul, it's Tertius. And again, like I said earlier, I think the person calling himself Paul is a pseudo Paul that's working with these people. But anyway, so pseudo Paul is giving us his actual views in Ephesians, Galatians, 1 2 Timothy, Titus. Whereas in Romans, we're getting a little bit of a mixed bag because Tertius is involved in the creation of Romans. So we're getting some of what he thinks sometimes. So that's what I'm doing. Like I look at those 5 letters to try to figure out what Paul wrote in pseudo Paul wrote and distinguish that person's thoughts from the thoughts of his co-authors.
Yeah.
Let's give one more example. Like if you look at Philippians, the Philippians hymn, Jesus supposedly is a pre-existent being and he becomes a man. That's what Philippians says. Whereas that's not really what Paul says. A pseudo Paul says elsewhere. He's got Jesus being born of a woman and doesn't say anything about him being pre-existent. Well, that's because I think it's Timothy's view, because Timothy co-wrote Philippians. So my point is, if you look at the so-called genuine and Deutero-Paulines or whatever, you look at the co-authored writings, all the co-authored writings, really, you find contradictions, but you don't really find that in the single-authored writings. And I don't think that's a coincidence, because co-authors are involved. And that's what I think happened.
For me, it's interesting, and from time to time I like to watch videos on these things of people who are continuing the research like yourself. It seems like just, you ever heard somebody say going down the rabbit hole?
Yeah.
It almost just is too deep for me. Like, I'm almost unwilling to go that far. Like, I have to question, why am I doing it? Why am I going that deep? Is this for me? Am I trying to change the world? Like, if it's just for me, man, that topic is just so deep. And so many experts have varying opinions. And experts and people who study like yourself formulate your own opinions. all interesting. I find that it's useful for kind of showing the how invalid the New Testament is. It's useful work, but man, it's tough work. That is some tough work you're getting into. That is some deep study. That it gets to a point it's hard for me to follow.
Yeah, and I get that because I get some people commenting on my channel disturbed in a way that I bring on one scholar, and the next day I bring on another scholar that completely contradicts everything the previous scholar said.
It's the rabbit hole.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
what
and
happens when you go down
what
that?
what does complicate the new Pauline chronology movement, as I call it, the new Pauline chronology, is you got some that hold the position of canonical Paul priority, and then you have those that hold the position of Marcion Paul priority, because Marcion had his own collection of Paul's letters. There are 10 letters in length. There's a total of 10 letters, I mean, and they're much shorter in length than the canonical epistles. And the Marcion scholars point out that none of those names that I mentioned are appear in the role of co-authors in in those epistles. But my issue with it is, okay, so let's pretend for a moment that this is really the case, that the Marcionite epistles, they're not they're not an abridged version of Paul, because the patristic sources, the church fathers, collectively agree that Marcion wrote with a sword, not with a pen. And he cut down the New Testament. He shortened Luke to become the Evangelion. He shortened Paul's letters to 10, and he shortened the size of all those letters therein, and including replacing Ephesians of Laodiceans. So, because Ephesians and the pastorals, 1 2 Timothy, Titus, don't show up in Marcion's canon, Laodiceans is there instead of Ephesians, just to be clear. So if you take the position that the Marcionite Paul is first, yeah, you would then take the position that canonical Paul was an expansion. A large amount of text was added, and the co-authors were added subsequently. But that to me doesn't make sense, because it's muddying the waters of Paul's authority by adding co-authors and then confusing his theology. To me, I think the mess came first, and a more orderly Marcionite New Testament came later. Because in some ways, I think the Marcionite New Testament in some ways is more orderly than ours, because it's not as confusing in the viewpoints, because it's more streamlined. A lot of the contradictions are gone, and like to me that makes more sense if somebody was shortening. And we do have examples of works that are abridgments in the ancient world. You take Second Maccabees, because some people will say texts never get longer. I'm sorry, texts never get short; they always get longer. But that's not true. Second Maccabees literally tells you in the text, this is an abridged work. People did shorten text in the ancient world. We know this. They definitely did.
Copy, cut, paste, all that was going on.
So, I mean, now, do we have an admission as clear cut like that when in canonical Paul or Marcion's Paul? Marcion's Paul says, I'm an abridgment of canonical Paul. No, it doesn't say that. Of course not. So I guess it is debatable there when it's not with Second Maccabees. But the issue is you have to ask yourself the question, what made the church fathers think it's an abridgment? Why? Why did they collectively come to that viewpoint? And the other thing is, I think Sebastian Moll is right when you look at his rule system and the way he analyzes. He's got a book called the Arch Heretic Marcion.
Yeah.
and you go through his system, and you can see that it's consistent. It's consistent with Marcion's theology almost entirely.
Hmm.
That he's cutting out, because Marcion, he did not believe in the Old Testament God. He hated the Old Testament God, and that he wanted to get rid of Old Testament references, get rid of anything that would make Jesus the son of the Old Testament God. Even get rid of prophecies as linking him with the Old Testament God. He was ditching all of that. And the
Yeah.
same thing would apply with Paul. But I'll just give one example. If Jesus was never born, well, you can't have brothers and sisters. In Marcion's Luke, there are no brothers and sisters anywhere. Jesus has no brothers and sisters anywhere. In
Hmm.
Marcion's version of Galatians, James isn't the Lord's brother either. Is that a coincidence? No, that's consistency. There's a consistent redaction going on there where anything he doesn't like, he's tossing out.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's, to me, I don't think it's absurd to think that the church fathers are right, that they were abridging the text. But nonetheless, I love the brilliant work that the Marcion scholars do. I bring them on the show. It's what I do. I entertain
Cool.
different viewpoints. I have my own views, and
Yeah.
I don't let them get. I keep them out when I conduct those interviews, as I typically
Have
do.
have you ever have you ever done AI on some of this subject matter? Asked AI because it's pretty advanced now, especially like.
Um,
Have you done
not
that?
not really, but I mean sometimes I use it, but I double check it, because I double check it because AI screws up often. It is getting better though. Admittedly, it is getting better.
Yeah, back when I was doing my
Uh,
studies, it wasn't like it is now. I didn't have those tools available to me. I wonder how much I would have
Yeah,
used it.
and at first it was a mess. It was getting things wrong left and right. It was awful. Um,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I did it the old school way, going to the library, reading books, reading manuscripts from professors. I I dug in the old way.
right.
And
Yeah.
I think of all the videos that I made on my page, I only had to remove one time for an error.
Mhm.
So I did my homework really well. All my videos still stand to this day. Because you got people who are against you or are constantly trying to poke holes in what you're saying.
Oh,
And
oh
it
yeah.
only happened to me one time where they got me, where I was incorrect on something and I actually had to withdraw the video. But one time out of all those videos I made, I worked real hard on getting my facts. But yeah, AI would be an interesting tool just to kind of ask questions about some of these things you're talking about. I myself um, find it so easy to poke holes in the New Testament. So easy that I don't necessarily feel like you have to go that deep in order to show somebody that the New Testament has problems.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
and so I've never really been inclined to go that deep.
yeah.
I admire it. I think I do admire how deep you go, and you've always been that way. You've always leaned towards the deep end of the pool, or I think where I kind of kept myself in the shallow end. I never felt it. I think you have to have some sort of a passion, whereas I think I had a mission to just chronicle my experience and why. I think you have a passion. I think you have to have that passion to go get into the deep end of the pool on some of this stuff. Because I can show somebody how screwed up the New Testament is on the shallow end of the pool. I can show pretty
Yeah,
easy without.
you definitely have to have a passion, because I mean,
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
seen people start a YouTube channel, and I just know right away, just from the way they're at, their mannerism.
yeah,
So especially with my years of experience doing this, I'm like, I'm literally thinking in my mind, you're fake. You're not even interested in this. You're just doing it because you
You
think
got
you're
to have
getting
the passion.
views and you're gonna get easy money. You don't care about this subject.
Oh,
And
it's
their
not
channels
easy
just
money,
fail,
though. It is not easy
unsurprisingly.
money.
It's no, it's not. Yeah. Yeah, I do wanna
You
mention,
got to have a passion to do what you're doing. You sitting right here
yeah,
doing this right now,
yeah.
you got to have passion because there's no
Oh, yeah.
other incentive to do it.
Yeah,
You,
I didn't get to where I am overnight. That
yeah,
doesn't work.
yeah,
You really gotta put in a lot of work.
yeah.
And
If you think you're going
some
to do
people
this
out there
for
just don't
money,
understand that.
you're done already. You're
Yeah.
doing this for passion, or you're going to hang it up fairly quickly.
Yeah, because the likelihood that you're gonna make that kind of money doing this is very
Yeah,
low.
very
It's
low.
very, very few YouTubers
If
get
you're
to
talking
that
about Donald
range.
Trump or Taylor Swift, yeah, probably better
You got a better chance
better
there. That's
chance
true.
at maybe making a nickel or two.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah,
Um,
you're passion driven, 100%,
um,
and that it requires that to go as deep as you're going. It
what
requires that passion.
what I to come back to the Marcion scenario, or
Mhm.
I do meet them halfway, like with take Marcus Vincent, um, who does take the position that the Marcionite edition of Paul came first. Um, and he got there's a book Jack Bull and Mark Bilby worked on that came out recently. Um, let me get that off my shelf.
Sure.
Where do I put it? Just give me a second to find it.
You're fine. I'm
Oh,
pretty cozy.
I found it. Yeah, the Apostolos Greek English
Okay.
Reader's Edition. Um, there's also an English only version for anybody that can't read Greek. Um, I have a beginner's knowledge of Greek, basically, but I can read Greek. I can't tell you what every word means,
Mhm.
but so that's why I got the Greek English version. But it's a good book if you want to know the latest work that's been done on what the Marcion's Paul actually looks like. So there's that. It's pretty interesting. It's from what I can tell, the research is it's similar. Let me rephrase that. The reconstruction is similar. It's not precisely the same, but it's similar to past reconstructions of Marcion's Paul. It's just more updated, refined. There's differences, of course, as there always is of any reconstructed text, but it's um, but again, like to me, I'm just still not quite. I'm not convinced of what they're saying about it being first. I mean, I guess it could be. Maybe it is. Who knows? I'm just convinced the canonical version came first. But where I do meet them halfway, or when I meet Marcus Vincent halfway, is because I don't think we can know what the original Paul wrote. In other words, Paul did not write the Marcionite edition, and he didn't write the canonical edition either. So to me, it's not the difference isn't as big as it might look. Because if Paul
The
didn't
unknown
write
is killing me.
right, if he didn't write the letters, if the historical Paul did not contribute to the letters of either collection, then what is the difference?
Yeah.
There isn't really much. It's just okay. This forgery came first before this forgery came first. Either way, we don't know what A said. Like A's here, B is a forgery, C is a forgery of a forgery. So both B and C don't go back to A. They're just attributing themselves to A, right? A is
Mhm.
Paul. So if you have Marcion's Paul being B and canonical Paul being C, or you have canonical Paul being B or Marcion's Paul being C, what the hell is the difference?
Yeah.
Neither go back to Paul. So to me, it's not really a big deal about which one really came first in the end of the day when it comes to trying to figure out the historical Paul.
Yeah. Well, to know the historical Paul would sure be cool, wouldn't it? But in my opinion, I'm afraid there's really no possible avenue to having any certainty, no absolutism on who Paul was.
The text.
If you can get the compass pointing at least in the right direction, maybe you can get that far. But
yeah, it's like putting on glasses, like in the movie They Live, and here's the BS and here's the truth. I can distinguish with these magic glasses.
You can't find true north, but at least you can get going in the right direction. It's kind of
right.
Probably where that is. And
yeah,
I'm an absolutist. I just hate that teetering on the edge of, did we figure it out? Did we not? And then somebody new comes along and throws you off balance a little bit.
I mean, if you dig further enough, the synoptic problem is a mess. I mean, you can find somebody that believes in, if you look hard enough, you can find someone that thinks that John came first, Luke came first, Matthew came first.
Never heard that one.
Oh yeah. I've had every position on my channel you can imagine. Every position.
It's
fascinating, really.
The whole synoptic. I never even heard of the word synoptic until later, and that was one of the things that changed my faith. That was one of the big ones, was the three synoptics. I thought Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were synonymous and told the same story, but when I realized that John was a completely separate ideology, that really shook my faith right there. And it should anybody, if you really look at it that way, the way they've got their differences.
Yeah, it's like right now a lot of scholars are moving away from the idea that there was a Q source. Really? And the thorough hypothesis is, like, from what I can tell from the scholars I've spoken to, especially when I was at SBL last year, they're moving away from that. They're going
what's the answer to why Matthew, Mark, and Luke sound? It's almost like when you read one, then you read the next one. Almost like you're reading the same thing over again.
Right. Matthew and Luke knew Mark, and Luke knew Matthew. There was no Q.
That's close association is what it is.
Yeah.
Telling the same stories. Yeah.
Oh, it makes sense to me, because when you look at Matthew and Luke, that you have the minor agreements. That's where Matthew and Luke agree against Mark, and they both have the double tradition. They both have infancy narratives and genealogies. Yeah. So it does make more sense that one does know the other, and you dispense with Q. That's what I think. I think that makes sense. Yeah. There's also a different position. It's another position called Matthean posteriority, which holds a position that Matthew knew Luke, as opposed to Luke knowing Matthew. I'm not swayed of that at the moment, but that is an interesting position. I think Luke knew Matthew. But in any case, you don't need Q. And when I look at Mark, the first gospel, I mean, even Papias actually seems to think Mark is the first gospel. It's the idea that Matthew was the first gospel. That came about because the real reason that came about was because they confused Matthew with the Hebrew gospel. Because Papias said that Matthew wrote the Hebrew gospel. He didn't claim that Matthew wrote our Matthew. He's not saying that. But later, especially by Irenaeus' time, they're saying that Matthew wrote the Hebrew and the Greek version. That's how Matthean priority started, because they confused a text that was completely different, nothing like our Gospel of Matthew, with Matthew. And so that's what happened. That's how Matthean priority really got kicked off. And there's like
we're running up over an hour. I don't have too much more time here.
Okay.
I haven't even pulled the sheets off my equipment yet. I got to get to work here
Sure.
shortly.
Okay.
Do you have any more pending questions for me? I mean, I could probably do about another 10 minutes here.
Sure.
And then I got to get to work.
Yeah, no problem. So what I typically do is like in these when I make these kind of videos, I ask this question.
Sure.
That is, when you like when what would you say to people? What would your advice be to people that leave are struggling, they're questioning Christianity, but they don't know what to do. They're thinking about leaving, but they're not sure what to do. They're caught in the middle. What would you say to them?
You know, I have a hard time imagining that mindset. I think the process is so gradual that if you're in that place, it's just a little further down the road and it'll be all the way, you'll be all the way done. I mean, if you're already to that place, but what I would say is find some videos like the ones I made. I mean, my videos are like baby food, right? They're pretty simple, but they tell you factoids about the Bible and stuff that a baby can digest. You don't have to think too hard on it. But yeah, I would if you're in that place, I would encourage to get away from the religious aspect and go towards the scientific aspect, and just try to figure out true from false, and it's not far from there, and you'll be free. Freedom from religion feels great. A lot of religious people don't realize just how amazing it is to be free from a religion. That would be my advice. Keep studying. YouTube is great now, right? Even from back when I was going strong, it's gotten way more now. I imagine way more information, easy to access information. And what are you thinking, like post life of somebody who was a Christian and who isn't now? Like, what do they have to look forward to? Is that kind of maybe what you're thinking?
Yeah, I suppose that's a way of looking at interpreting my question. Yeah.
Do you want to rephrase your question, or do you think I adequately answered it from my end?
But I do think you adequately answered it. I do.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and I would just end that with once you're free from religion, the universe just opens up with awe and mystery. The mystery is fun. I love the mystery of life in the universe. When you're stuck in a religion, the mystery of our existence just, it's not there. It's like it's all explained for you in some unreal false ideology. When you escape that, like now I just love the chances of me even existing, and I look at my skin and my fingernails and my brain and people and life and even the little flies that are bugging me as just, I just can't believe this is even a thing, that this is even real. Like the mystery of life in the universe is just, it's exciting and it's fun to explore. I never had that freedom as a Christian. That freedom did not exist. It was all explained what it all is, and it was all wrong. When you get out of that straitjacket, you're free to explore. You're free. Great. Feels wonderful. If you're worried about life after death, like if you're leaving a religion and all of a sudden, oh, but I don't want to die, you know, I don't want it just to be over when I die. You don't need a religion. It doesn't have to be that way. You can study near-death experiences or study consciousness and reimagine how you think it might be. I mean, you can still have a lot of the same hopes and dreams and excitements as you did with a religion, but you ain't got one no more. It's great. You know, there's the level of freedom that you have when you get out of that religious straitjacket is just fantastic.
I'd like to remind everybody about the link to Stairway to Reason on Facebook is provided in the description below, and the YouTube channel Stairway to Reason is also tagged in the description below, and links to both will be provided in the pinned comment just underneath that. And that being said, Jeff, thank you very much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Well, it's good seeing you again, and it's going down that rabbit hole is always interesting. It's fun to hear what you have to say on some of these things. And you make me feel like I need to do a little digging and catch up with you a little bit. So, thanks for having me, Jacob.
Hello, viewers. Thanks for watching this video from the History Valley YouTube channel. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And if any of you wish to further support this channel, please consider checking out this channel's Patreon page and becoming a patron, and/or donate through PayPal or through Super Chat during your live stream. Thank you.